Episode 28, Brown Mountain Lights. Hey y'all, I'm Heather, and this is Poison Appalachia, the dark side of Appalachia. As always, thank you for listening. We need a little break from the seriousness of the last 2 weeks' episodes, I think, so I thought today I would cover Brown Mountain Lights and other ghost light phenomena. Finally, I get to do one in North Carolina. I really do try to cover all of Appalachia, but most things I know happen in West Virginia, so if you have any suggestions from other states, please let me know. I mean, West Virginia is great and I love it, but I hate to leave other places out. Some people have heard of the Brown Mountain Lights, but not everyone. So what are they? Well, we'll find out. The Brown Mountain Lights are a series of ghost lights reported sporadically for many years near Brown Mountain in North Carolina. Atmospheric ghost lights are lights or fires that appear in the atmosphere without an obvious cause. Brown Mountain is a low-lying ridge approximately 1.5 miles long in the Pisgah National Forest near Morganton in western North Carolina on the border of Burke and Caldwell counties. The Pisgah National Forest is part of the Appalachian Mountains and of Appalachia in general, so we got it covered here. I don't want to go too much into the Pisgah National Forest, but I saw and thought this was kind of cool, so I thought I'd include it. American forestry has its roots in what's now the Pisgah National Forest. The Cradle of Forestry, or Biltmore Forest School, located in southern part of the forest, was the site of the first school of forestry in the United States. It operated during the late 19th and 20th centuries. The school was opened and operated at the direction of George Washington Vanderbilt II, who was the builder of the Biltmore Estate in Asheville. The forestry education offered at Biltmore was taught by Carl Schenck. A native German, Schenck was referred to Vanderbilt when Gifford Pinchot resigned to operate the newly formed Division of Forestry. The Cradle of Forestry and the Biltmore Estate played a major role in the birth of the U.S. National Forest Service. Today, these lands are part of an educational and recreational area in the Pisgah National Forest. So, we all know Wikipedia isn't really the greatest resource for things sometimes. Although there's a lot of stuff in there that does match other stories when I'm looking it up, so I do use it some. But this is one of the times when there's kind of a big difference between different articles, I think. So, Wikipedia says the first published accounts were in 1913, but other articles have evidence of them being way earlier. So let's just start with those, and then I'll cover what Wikipedia says next. Mysterious lights have been appearing at the Brown Mountain in the Linville Gorge area of North Carolina for hundreds of years. According to Cherokee legend, around 1200 AD, a great battle was fought between the Cherokee and Catawba Indians at Brown Mountain, and the mysterious lights are from the Indian maidens still searching for the men who died in battle. From what I've read, there's really only one story of this, and it can't be verified, of course, but it is a nice story, I think. In 1771, military agent, cartographer, mystic, and eccentric genius John William Gerard de Brom presented a report to King George III about the southern part of the colonies. It was an inaccurate claim that de Brom made a reference to the Brown Mountain Lights. So this report has definitely been disputed. Josiah Lafayette Fate Wiseman was the great-uncle of Scotty Wiseman, who sung the legend of the Brown Mountain Lights, greatly popularized the Brown Mountain Lights, making them the most popular ghost story in North Carolina. He's also the oldest report of strange light near Brown Mountain, that was well known at the time and played no role in founding the legend. According to a tradition that was passed down through the Wiseman family, but that wasn't published until 1971, sometime around 1854, young Fate Wiseman was camping at Wiseman's View with his father, and he first noticed a flash of light in the distance. Wiseman found that the same momentary flash would appear at the same place on the horizon about the same time, varying by at most a half an hour or so, each and every night. He would often go to the place at the expected time. He would stare into the distance until he saw a glimpse of the light. It's unknown how reliable or precise the debate of around 1854 is, because the source, Scotty Wiseman, was remembering things that 79-year-old Fate had told him when he was 13 years old, 50 years prior. However, the description of the light is consistent with a distant train headlight turning a corner. The first train in North Carolina began nightly service between Morganton and Salisbury in 1858, and trains are known for following consistent and regular schedules, as the light did. So that's most likely what he saw there. Wikipedia says the earliest published mentions of the lights began in 1912 on the heels of the first publication of Jules Verne's 1906 novel, Master of the World. An important plot point in this novel consists of a mad scientist constructing an airship inside the secret lair in Table Rock near Morganton, North Carolina, activities which cause strange lights to appear on the summit of the mountain. This rapidly expanding electrification of the Linville Gorge area from the 1890s through the 1910s seems to be the origin of the Brown Mountains Light legend, possibly helped by Verne's novel. A number of travelogues, including accounts of the mysterious happenings and ghost stories, were published around the region prior to 1900, but there's no mention of unexplained lights in any of these historical sources. Mansfield's investigation found many locals were unaware of strange lights until 1910 or later. Joseph Lovin, who lived next to Lovin's Hotel, said he first noticed the lights in 1897, but took no interest in them and didn't hear anyone else talking about them until his neighbor C.E. Gregory began trying to draw public attention to them in 1910. Also, Southern Railway had begun upgrading their locomotive headlamps to 600,000 candle power systems in 1909, rendering their train's lights output greater than some of the lighthouses that were in operation at the time. One early account of the lights from the September 24th, 1913, as reported in the Charlotte Daily Observer, it described a mysterious light seen just above the horizon every night, red in color, appearing punctually at 7:30 p.m. and again at 10 p.m. So I looked up the novel Master of the World, known in French as the Maître du Monde, set in the summer of 1903. It was a series of unexplained events occur across the eastern United States caused by objects moving with such speed that they are nearly invisible. The first-person narrator, John Strock, head inspector of the Federal Police Department in Washington, D.C., travels to the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina to investigate. He discovers that all the phenomena are being caused by Roeber, a brilliant inventor. So this is kind of like maybe a War of the Worlds scare. People thought it was real, so maybe they did see it, and maybe not. It's just kind of hard to tell. In 1913, a U.S. Geological Survey concluded that there were headlights from a locomotive, but when the tracks washed away 3 years later and people continued to see the lights, that theory also was thrown out. During the early 1900s, mysterious lights were thought to be aliens, and Brown Mountain was even featured in the American pulp magazine The Argosy, telling people to go see the UFOs at Brown Mountain. There's a tale that says the lights are the ghosts of a mother and child murdered in the neighboring Jonas Ridge community. Meanwhile, in his bluegrass song Brown Mountain Lights, early country music star Scotty Wiseman attributed the lights to the spirit of a trusty old slave searching for his long-lost master, a notion that manages to be both fanciful and offensive. As in Verne's novel, locals asked their congressman for a government investigation. In 1913, the United States Geological Survey employee D.B. Sterrett was dispatched to the area and quickly found that the headlights of the westbound Southern Railway locomotives and the train schedules he consulted left him no doubt that these were the cause of the mountain lights being reported. In July 1916, though, a flood caused the train activity around Brown Mountain to cease for several weeks, which provided the opportunity for some to doubt Sterrett's conclusions. With Sterrett's investigation being considered inadequate by locals, the USGS sent George Mansfield to investigate in 1922. As part of his investigation, Mansfield set up an Alidade telescope near Lovin's Hotel, at the former home of C.E. Gregory. Accompanied by members of the Lovin family, he recorded a number of nighttime lights, one of which appeared to move and flare in brightness, making Joseph Lovin call it a true Brown Mountain light, but which, through the telescope, proved to be stationary throughout the entire evening, despite repeated azimuth readings being taken. Another series of lights that were seen were found to plot on a map to a curve in the Southern Railway track, and the time of the appearance of that light corresponded exactly to the scheduled train. At the end of the observing session, Robert Lovin said that he didn't believe that the lights had seen were bright enough to be genuine Brown Mountain lights, but Joseph Lovin said that he considered the lights that they saw to have been average display of the phenomenon. Through the years, many people have reported seeing something. The lights can appear above the horizon or on the ground. They can be pretty much any color, but most are often described as red balls of light. They often move around and have trails behind them, and sometimes they pulsate. They are not extremely common occurrences, but they say if you're persistent enough, you'll eventually see them. Plenty of experts have been called in to give their input on exactly what the cause of the legend is, but none have ever really given a solid answer on details, and details on a real reliable research are few and far between. Some folks say that they're merely car or train lights. There are plenty of car lights that are visible from the various outlooks used for spotting Brown Mountain lights, but the mystery lights are very different and easy to tell apart from normal man-made lights, people say. Some say the lights are reflections of lights in the various towns nearby, but this is disputed by claims that the lights were seen long before electricity was used to reduce light. Other explanations include St. Elmo's fire, electromagnetic sparks from tectonic plates shifting, ball lightning, and swamp gases. None of these make much sense either, and all are reaches to say the least. People still flock to see the Brown Mountain lights, but spotting them is never guaranteed. Reportedly, your best chance to see the lights comes on a dry, clear night in October or November after the leaves are off the trees. There are roadside locations for observing the lights on the Blue Ridge Parkway at mileposts 310, Brown Mountain Overlook, and 301, Green Mountain Overlook. And from the Brown Mountain Overlook, also North Carolina Highway 181 near Jonas Ridge, North Carolina. Additionally, lights have been reported from the top of the Table Rock and Wiseman's View, both located in the Linville Gorge Wilderness. The best viewing location is probably Brown Mountain Overlook on Highway 181 between mile marker 20 and 21. Wiseman's View is another good viewing location, but it's a little hard to get to. It's located on a gravel road about 5 miles south of Linville Falls on State Route 1238. There seems to be a lot of people who have seen them over the years, so I definitely think there's something there. Maybe just something in the atmosphere that causes it to happen. Who knows? I don't think it's anything supernatural, though. Maybe someday somebody will figure the mystery out. Have you seen the Brown Mountain Lights? If so, let me know. I'd like to hear your story and maybe share it. So I wanted to cover other ghost lights too. One, because there wasn't a ton to talk about on Brown Mountain Lights, but also I just think they're kind of interesting. So let's cover a few of them from the U.S., not just Appalachia, though. There are 4 other ghost lights in North Carolina, but I couldn't find a lot about any of them, so I'm just going to include what I found. What is it about North Carolina that produces these things, I wonder? This first one is the Vander Light in Cumberland County. Legend has it that the railroad employee Archer Matthews was walking on the train when a noise down the track distracted him. When investigating, he tripped, knocked himself out, and when the train came, it took his head with it, which is gross. People swear that when you stand on the ridge where Old Vander Road crosses the railroad tracks at night and look east towards Stedman, you can see the light on the tracks. Archer Matthews is looking for his head still, I guess. Also, Cove City Light, nestled at the junction of North Carolina 41 and Old Highway 70 in Craven County. Cove City is a town of fewer than 500 people, but for over a century, an orange ghost light has made a reputation for the town. According to folklore, hunters once killed a bear cub, but the mother bear escaped into the swamp. Soon after, a woman traveling with her baby to Cove City was surprised by the mother bear coming out of the woods. The bear seized her infant and ran off in the wilderness. Although a search party was quickly formed, neither the bear nor the baby were ever found. The ghostly light that occasionally appears in the night is said to be the mother still searching for her lost child. Mako Light, 14 miles west of Wilmington, is in Mako. Legend has it that a horrific train accident in 1867 led to this eerie light. A flagman on a freight train, Joe Baldwin, was sleeping in the caboose when a violent jerk awakened him. The caboose had detached from the rest of the train and come to a stop on a train trestle that ran over a swampy marshland. Joe grabbed his lantern, and he heard an oncoming passenger train quickly approaching. Joe tried to signal the other locomotive, frantically waving his lantern, but the other train plowed headlong into the caboose. The impact decapitated Joe and hurled his body into the swamp. What is up with these trains cutting people's heads off? North Carolina is not a very safe place to be, I guess, if you're on a train. Searchers later found Joe's body, but not his head. Soon after, a mysterious light began to appear in the tracks near Mako. Locals said it was Baldwin searching for his missing head. For decades, this was one of the most prominent ghost stories along the southeast coast. When the old tracks were pulled up and the trestle were removed in 1977, sightings of the light dwindled away. Pactolus Light. In 1910, a young teaching student, Edwin Cox, traveled by horseback to the small town of Pactolus. He wanted to surprise the young lady he'd met at school by meeting her at the train station and proposing to her. The train was very late, and as dusk approached, he left to return to Greenville. On the way, however, some locals wanted to rob him of his horse. They ambushed and murdered Cox, but the horse escaped and fled riderless back to his home. The young man's family feared the worst. Edwin's body was never found, and according to some versions of the story, his young love died of a broken heart. Soon after, a ghostly light began to appear near the tracks in Pactolus. Legend has it that it is the ghost of Edwin Cox, still out there in the dark trying to signal his lost love, even though the tracks are long gone. And according to local lore, if you drive your car down the old dirt road where the tracks used to be and flash your headlamps 3 times, you'll see lights appear in reply. So those last 4, I feel, are more like local legends and probably not the same thing as ghost lights. I mean, maybe they're literally a light from a ghost, but not the ghost lights the rest of them are. So we'll go on with some more in different parts of the country. The spook light, also known as the Hornet Spook Light, Hollis Light, and Joplin Spook Light, is an atmospheric ghost light on the border between Missouri and northeastern Oklahoma, a few miles west of the small town of Hornet, Missouri. The spook light, often referred to as the Joplin Light or the Tri-State Spook Light, is actually in Oklahoma near the small town of Quapaw. However, it's most often seen from the east, which is why it's been attached to the tiny hamlet of Hornet, Missouri. and the larger Berlin town of Joplin. According to legend, the spook light was first seen by Indians along the infamous Trail of Tears in 1836. However, the first official report occurred in 1881 in a publication called the Ozark Spook Light. Next written mention of the mysterious light wouldn't appear until years later by way of an article in the Neosho newspaper in 1935, according to Ozark historian Larry Wood. In 1946, Kansas City Star reporter Charles Graham enlisted the help of Colonel Dennis McCuniff, commanding officer in the U.S. Army at Camp Crowder. With a handful of accompanying Army engineers, Graham and McCuniff spent days investigating the area, only to contend the mysterious lights were simply the result of car headlights on the adjacent Route 66. But many are skeptical of that explanation as they have seen it in person. The ball of fire described as varying from the size of a baseball to a basketball, dances and spins down the center of the road at high speeds, rising and hovering above the treetops before it retreats and disappears. Others have said it sways from side to side like a lantern being carried by some invisible force. In any event, the orange fire-like ball has reportedly been appearing nightly for well over 100 years. According to locals, the best time to view the spook light is between the hours of 10 p.m. and midnight. It tends to shy away from large groups and loud sounds. Though many paranormal and scientific investigators have studied the light, according to the Army Corps of Engineers, no one has really been able to provide a conclusive answer to the origin of the light. Many explanations have been presented over the years, including escaping natural gases, reflecting car lights and billboards, and will-o'-the-wisps, a luminescence created by rotting organic matter. However, all of these explanations fall short of being conclusive. As to the theory of escaping natural gas, which is common in marshy areas, the hornet light is seemingly not affected by wind or rain, and how would it self-ignite? The idea that it may be a will-o'-the-wisp is discounted, as the biological phenomena does not display intensity of the ball of light seen along the Devil's Promenade. Explanations of headlights or billboards are easily discarded, as the light was seen years before automobiles or billboards were made, and before a road even existed in the area. One possible explanation that is not as easily discounted, but not yet proven conclusive, is that the lights are electrical atmospheric charges. In areas where rocks deep below the Earth's surface are shifting and grinding, an electrical charge can be created. This area, lying on a fault line running from East New Madrid, Missouri, westward to Oklahoma, was the site of 4 earthquakes during the 18th century. These type of electrical fields are most commonly associated with earthquakes. I'm wondering if the last one might be what the same as the Brown Mountain Lights are. Maybe there's shifting in the mountains. I don't know. I know nothing of the area, but if you want to visit, the website says from I-44, take exit 4, Highway 86 south, follow approximately 6 miles to the junction of Route BB, turn right on BB Highway, and follow the road until it ends. Turn right again, go 1 mile, turn left on East 50 Road, also known as the Spooklight Road. Approximately 1.5 to 2 miles is the darkest and best place to wait. So if you're in the area, go check it out. The Marfa Lights. The Marfa Lights are mysterious glowing orbs that appear in the desert outside the West Texas town of Marfa and have mystified people for generations. According to eyewitnesses, the Marfa Lights appear to be roughly the size of basketballs and are varyingly described as white, blue, yellow, red, or other colors. Reportedly, the Marfa Lights hover, merge, twinkle, split into two, flicker, float up the air, or dart quickly across Mitchell Flat, an area east of Marfa where they're most commonly reported. The first historical record of the Marfa Lights was in 1883 when a young cowhand, Robert Reed Ellison, saw a flickering light while he was driving cattle through Paisano Pass and wondered if it was the campfire of the Apache. Other settlers told him that they often saw the lights, but that when they investigated, they found no ashes or evidence of a campsite. Joe and Ann Humphreys next reported seeing the lights in 1885. The first published account of the lights appeared in the July 1957 issue of Coronet magazine. In 1976, Elton Miles' Tales of the Big Bend included stories dating to the 19th century and a photograph of the Marfa Lights by a local rancher. It now lists 34 Marfa Light sightings from 1945 through 2008. Monitoring stations were put in place starting in 2003. He's identified an average of 9.5 mLs on 5.25 nights per year, but believes that the monitoring stations may only be finding half the Marfa Lights in the Mitchell Flat. There seems to be no way to predict when the lights will appear. They're seen in various weather conditions, but only a dozen or so nights a year, and nobody knows for sure what they are, or even if they really exist. During World War II, pilots from nearby Midland Army Airfield tried to locate the source of the mysterious lights, but were unable to discover anything. Lovers of the paranormal have attributed the Marfa Lights to everything from space aliens to the wandering ghosts of Spanish conquistadors. Academics, too, have tried to find a scientific explanation for the enigmatic lights. A group of physics students from the University of Texas at Dallas concluded the headlights from vehicles on nearby U.S. Highway 67 could explain at least some of the reported sightings of Marfa lights. Another possible explanation is the refraction of the light caused by layers of the air at different temperatures. This optical illusion, sometimes called a superior mirage or a fata morgana. A fata morgana is sometimes seen in the ocean, causing a ship to appear or float above the horizon. Gradients needed to produce this optical effect are common in the West Texas desert. So it could definitely be something like that. Still others speculate that Marfa lights may be caused by the same gases that create the glowing lights associated with swamp gas. Phosphine and methane. Under certain conditions, these gases can ignite when they contact oxygen. Though the Marfa lights are nowhere near a marsh, there are significant reserves of oil, natural gas, and other petroleum hydrocarbons in the area, which could include methane in quantities capable of producing an effect similar to that caused by swamp gas. Which that makes sense. The best place to see them has always been a little half moon of paved road off US 90, about 9 miles east of Marfa. You pull over and park as if you're having a nighttime picnic. There are even picnic tables there, and wait for the lights to appear. In 2003, the town used $720,000 from federal government and the Texas Department of Transportation to expand the area into the Marfa Lights Mystery Viewing Center. One of the oddest roadside monuments in the state, a giant circular adobe restroom with mounted binoculars and bronze plaques. The main one reads, "The Marfa Mystery Lights are visible on many clear nights between Marfa and Paisano Pass, as one looks forward to the Chiante Mountains. The lights may appear in various colors as they move above, split apart, melt together, disappear, and reappear. Robert Reed Ellison, a young cowboy, reported sighting the lights in 1983. Hebron Light in Maryland. I couldn't find much about this one either, but here's what I did find. The Maryland State Police had their hands full just before midnight on a clear but steamy night of July 16, 1952. Trooper Robert W. Burkhart and a sergeant were on the routine patrol a mile west of Hebron and had just turned off the Church Street extended a mile-long stretch of road divided by trees on both sides. Off in the distance, a circular yellow ball of light was observed slightly above the road and moving towards the car. Whatever it was began to rapidly close on the vehicle, moving directly in the middle of the road. At the last possible moment, to avoid a collision, the trooper swerved off the road and into the shoulder and skidded to a rather abrupt stop. According to the two troopers, the light suddenly stopped and hovered in the glare of their headlights approximately 20 feet away. As they restarted the car and began to approach the object, it receded. And as they gained speed towards the light, the object matched the squad's speed and kept the same distance. As the car reached a speed of 40 miles per hour, the light inexplicably vanished. Not wanting to risk ridicule, Burkhart returned the following night with 5 other patrolmen and found the light was already there on the street waiting for them. They all exited their vehicles and attempted to surround the light, which abruptly winked out and then reappeared in a nearby field. Several days afterwards, additional officers, including Edward H. Bracey, pursued the object for over a half mile before the globe veered off the road at 50 miles per hour into a field. Suddenly, it stopped as abruptly as it started, even though older residents claimed it had been showing up periodically for a century. The Salisbury Daily Times featured a story, "Professor Believes Ghost Lights is Gas," in which a Johns Hopkins professor alleged the lights were being generated by decaying vegetable matter, seeing to the surface and being moved by a gust of wind. The professor stated, "It seems a shame to have state police out there all night trying to catch a little bag of gas." The sightings continued to occur off and on until the road was blacktopped. The Wicomico County Road Division reports have the road being tarred and chipped in 1953, widened and rebuilt in 1958, and blacktopped in 1974. It may have been that the dust from the original road was reflected in automobile lights, providing the ghost light illusion. The Oviedo lights are a phenomenon reported in Florida, particularly along Snow Hill Road, which connects Chilolota and Geneva. The best explanation for the lights, and the one many people firmly believe, is that they are a product of swamp gases, also called swamp ghost lights, jack-o'-lanterns, and will-o'-wisps. These lights are created when organic material breaks down in swamplands, creating methane and phosphine gas. Methane is flammable, and phosphorus can self-ignite when they meet oxygen, which can cause the spontaneous bursts of light. But they are real, and they are most likely the direct inspiration for fairy tales where characters see a far-off light in the distance and it lures them off in their path into a bog or a swamp. Some say the sightings began in the 1940s, but the earliest documented case started in the mid-60s. Legend says that starting in around midnight, at unpredictable intervals, and especially in the winter months, a light zooms down the road. It heads south from Snow Hill and towards the Econ River Bridge. From a distance, it resembles an oncoming car, but as it approaches, witnesses say its light is as bright as a freight train, and it never separates into two lights, as would car lights. Its tint takes on a discernibly bluish hue, and it starts to wobble slightly and then disappears. Trying to see these illuminations was a popular pastime for teenagers between 1940s and 1970s. Lights were usually best seen in the warmer months when one drove on the bridge. They parked and walked down the canoe launch via the path from the bridge. The lights were often described as greenish and very, very bright. Some locals even described being chased by the lights as they scrambled back to their cars. Reported sightings of the lights have diminished since the 1970s, but that doesn't mean they've completely disappeared. Still, perhaps the most interesting issue of these lights is the resistance to being defied or explained. I feel like all these lights kind of fall into two categories: ghost sightings and atmospheric sightings. I'm more inclined to believe in the second category, but who knows if any of these are for real. The Farmer's Almanac says, all across the globe, people from a wide cross-section of cultures tell tales of ghostly lights that hover above the ground, deep in marshes, bogs, and wet, decaying places. These lights, known variously as ghost lights, corpse candles, will-o'-the-wisp, jack-o'-lantern, fairy lights, spook lights, ghost orbs, hinky-punk, pucks, and dozens of other names, are said to be evil or at least mischievous in nature, luring unsuspecting mortals from the path towards certain doom. Like much else from old folklore, the existence of strange floating lights in the wilderness is more than just a made-up legend to scare people. In fact, some scientists have taken the old stories seriously enough to study what might be responsible. Though no one knows for sure, the most popular hypothesis is that of decaying matter, which I mentioned earlier. This is what the Farmer's Almanac is saying. These gases have been known to spontaneously ignite upon coming into contact with oxygen, causing a series of brief, low-temperature flares. This is why, as the legend also states, the lights do not consume trees or grasses the way a normal fire would. This effect has been replicated in laboratories. Others have speculated the lights are caused by static electricity, given off by charged rocks and soil that have been electrified by the shifting of the Earth's tectonic plates. So there you go. Do you believe in ghost lights? Have you ever seen anything like it? I have not, but maybe someday I will. As always, thank you for listening. Follow me on social media under Poison Appalachia. You can visit my website at poisonappalachia.com. If you could, please rate and share and like me on whatever podcast you listen to, if it's available. Help get the word out and get more listeners. And I read some reviews on Apple, and they weren't the best, so I'm trying to redo some of my older episodes. Maybe my ratings will improve. But if you want to, could you please go to Apple and give me a good rating? Or whatever kind of rating you think I deserve. Thanks. Talk to y'all later. Bye.